someone who doesn't sell himself. Part of the problem is that he lives in LA. Part of the problem is that he doesn't take credit for many things that he has done. So, without wasting too much time because we've got to go, let me introduce a very dear friend and someone I respect hugely as one of the greatest A&R guys I know, Bisla. He's the president of a company called, surprisingly, A&R Worldwide.
Thank you, Atul. You're way too kind. Great to be back in Mumbai. I know that my British accent, you're probably thinking, okay, so a brown guy, English accent, living in Los Angeles, he's probably the furthest thing from being Indian, he's probably Mexican or some other denomination. I'm actually Punjabi, 100%, and was born and raised in England. And I wanted to start the session off today with music because I feel that so many people now are focused on the business of music and not actually on the music business. Music is the DNA of the entire ecosystem, and A&R is a lifeblood that basically transforms all these different touch points in pop culture, whether it's streaming, social media, radio, live, synchronization, which is music integration with film, TV, promos, trailers, video games, etc., etc. And A&R is extremely vital. I feel that it's an art form that's being lost. It's like almost losing a Michelin-star chef, right? And solely relying on fast food now. McDonald's tastes good once in a while, but you eat that enough, eventually it's going to kill you, give you a heart attack. And I feel the music industry is heading that way.
I can also say a lot of interesting things that. So why should we believe this guy, right? He could be a bullshitter who's just very articulate. How many of you guys have heard of someone called Adele? Seriously, that's it? Not even two hands up for everyone? Who do you think discovered Adele? Thank you.
Well,
now you know the pedigree of what we're talking about.
Well, just to clarify, I didn't discover Adele, but I played a very important part in giving Adele her first ever break outside of the UK before she was signed. So I had a radio show.
Tomato, tomato.
Well, look, I give Jonathan Dickens, who managed a lot of credit, and
that's the thing with great A&R people, you don't take credit.
Well, no, I helped with introducing her to the US market and other territories around the globe through my radio show. Every US label passed on her because they felt that she was not marketable. And I've always been a music fan. To me, even as an A&R executive, if you stop being a fan of something that you love doing on a daily basis, then you sort of lose touch with that reality. And with Adele, it was just something that when I first heard her demos at Jonathan's dad's office in London, Jonathan's a manager from 2005 till this day. His dad is one of my mentors, Barry Dickens, who runs a booking agency in London, and he had played me her demos back in 2006. And instantly I felt there was a magical ability about her songwriting, her vocal tone. And I just said to him, look, I think these songs are radio hits. And he goes, great, I hope that you can play her songs on your radio show, which I did. And instantly when I played her demos on my radio show, the fans reacted. I mean, it was amazing to see, Los Angeles, which is obviously a very important cultural marketplace, embracing her music without a record label or a music publisher at the time. And then subsequently, because of that early success, we did her first ever radio interview, and of course I worked with Jonathan in shopping her demos to the US major labels. I saw the emails to this day where everyone said no. The only person that actually said yes was Craig Kalman, the chairman of Atlantic Records. He responded to me and said, hey Sam, I think she's got a great voice, great songs. But he made a vital mistake, and he goes, let me check with my A&R team to see what they think. And of course, they responded saying, hey, she's not marketable, because at the time, if you go to the A&R Worldwide website, we have a picture when she was 16 in my office. She didn't look like the star that she is today. She looked like a 16-year-old girl that was actually looked like 30 years old. And obviously, she was overweight, but we've all been overweight, in some way, shape, or form. But the thing is, she had amazing talent, and that is something that was undeniable.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. Your journey very quickly. What is this radio show you're talking about? Where did you start and what happened?
So when I moved to the US, I was always a big fan of radio. So growing up in England, in a Punjabi household, my parents would play Bollywood music, Punjabi music, but at the same time, we had a radio in the house, so my parents would let me listen to John Peel on BBC. And John Peel was this really cool tastemaker DJ on BBC Radio 1, so his show introduced me to a lot of amazing talents. And he was one of those tastemakers or taste keepers that championed music that he believed in very early on, and a lot of these acts went on to become very successful in the UK and worldwide. So I always admired his, his instincts, his authenticity, his passion, belief, and that really sort of inspired me to look at music the same way, not judge it by if it's popular, but does it touch your ear? Does it have an impact? And that's how I judge, great music. And so when I moved to the States, I would listen to American radio in Central California, and they were playing, hip hop, Latin music, other genres, but nothing that really sort of evoked the passion that I was listening to in the UK, where it was new wave, punk, disco, reggae, basically a multi-scope of different genres. And so I would call the local radio stations and bug them to play all these records. And one DJ on this particular station was like, look, man, you're calling me every single week. I have no idea who these bands are. Why don't you come by my radio show and let me listen to these records? Which I did that. And he ended up playing a lot of my music on his show. And he goes, here's the deal. I'll teach you about radio, and in return, you let me play your records. And I go, deal. So I was 15 at the time. And eventually got my first radio show at age 16. And because I'd never done radio, the program director said, look, you have a British accent, so we'll have you read the news, because you sound way better reading the news than talking about music. So eventually, after about 6 months, getting comfortable, speaking on the airwaves, they gave me an import radio show. That was back in 1984. And so from 1984 onwards, I've always worked in radio. I went from college radio to commercial radio, did actual live mix show, mixing on the Technique 1200s, new mark mixer, and actually playing like house music back in the 80s, and eventually got into programming radio in the early 90s in Central California, broke a lot of bands on my show, which also garnered me a lot of national attention with a lot of the influential radio brands in the US, but also with the A&R community. And that's sort of led me to eventually launching the show in Los Angeles in 2003 after I left KCRW. KCRW is a very important radio station in LA, which is a part of NPR, National Public Radio, and no one quits KCRW. I did, and that was because, besides my day job and everything else, I was also a young dad with a son and a daughter. And my son's here, by the way, from LA, Daniel. I quit my radio job because of you. But eventually, I got hired by Indie 1031, which was a very important radio station that literally had celebrities like, Steve Jones and the Sex Pistols, Henry Rollins, Crystal Method, Danny Masterson, who's, maybe we should talk about him right now, but there were a lot of celebrities on the station, and I was the only one of the few non-celebrities doing the radio show. And my import show at the station helped break a lot of artists. Adele was one of them, but then also artists like LMFAO getting their first ever break on worldwide radio, Ting Tings, a bunch of other acts that became global successes, and obviously success, on various platforms. And eventually my show started getting syndicated, picked up by other radio stations around the world. They started reaching out to me saying, hey, how are you discovering all these bands? We want to run a radio show because not only are you breaking new music, but your ratings are phenomenal. And a lot of the radio program, a lot of radio consultants were scratching their heads going, you're playing all this unfamiliar music and getting great ratings. This does not make sense. I go, because you know why? I'm playing music that sounds familiar. It may not be a hit today, but it's going to be a hit tomorrow. And eventually my show got picked up by over 70 radio stations worldwide, including some very, very powerful radio brands like the world famous K-Rock in Los Angeles, Flux FM in Berlin, The End in Seattle that broke Nirvana. K-Rock obviously was the most powerful radio station in the world at one point, and it's also the station that gave life to Coachella. If K-Rock was not around, Coachella would not exist, because K-Rock is the station that got Coachella promoted, but they were also able to bring the bands to Coachella because they had that much power, and that's how literally Coachella, the biggest festival in the world, was born because of the help of K-Rock.
And this is all rock radio.
No, K-Rock, even though it says it's K-R-O-Q, but they played everything from hip hop to new wave, electronic music, rock, punk. Singer-songwriters, so they are a station that broke bands like Depeche Mode, artists like Coldplay, Foo Fighters, Beastie Boys back in the day. Yeah, so it's an iconic radio station that literally changed the landscape of pop culture, and personalities like Jimmy Kimmel, he got his break at K-Rock, Carson Daly, who's another big TV personality, got his break at K-Rock, and the list goes on.
So how did you think of setting up A&R Worldwide?
So, just to sort of, I don't really have a short amount of time, so I'll try to make this as concise as possible. So from radio, when I was doing my show, I would read the back of the album covers and look at who produced the record, who mixed, who wrote the songs, who the management was, who the publisher was. So I literally wanted to learn the DNA behind the music. And so I got to then wanting to meet the people behind the music, because initially I thought the artists did everything. They wrote the songs, they produced, they A&R, they were the publisher, and I realized that there was actually a whole team. It was like Liverpool FC. You may have a fantastic football team on the field, but behind the team is a great coaching staff. And so that taught me a lot about, the back end, about the artists and who is helping them create and elevate their great art. And so that's when I started getting involved into, because of radio, besides broadcasting, I started getting involved in marketing, doing live events, DJing, meeting the managers, booking shows, becoming a booking agent, promoter, club DJ for many years, and eventually a lot of the A&R people started reaching out to me saying, hey, how are you finding these bands? Because we want to sign them. So back in 1991, when I was working in Central California, I traveled to Europe and picked up an import version of a song called All That She Wants by a Swedish band called Ace of Base. And I started playing on my radio show. We were the first radio station in North America to play that song. And I remember my boss saying, I heard the song, it sounds like a massive hit. We're going to add this into rotation, which means we're going to get a daytime airplay. And the song usually blew up on our radio station, and eventually 6 months later, Clive Davis at Arista Records signed him. And they went on to do $1 billion worth of business across all revenue streams, sold I think over 60 million albums. But again, there's no magic to it. It's about being a fan. And the reason I played Luke's song at the start of the panel was because so many times you hear about people talk about data and all these other things that to me are secondary. It's not the main driver. A&R has 4 fundamental, foundations to it, at least from my perspective. So there's, artist and repertoire, there's analytics and research, artist and relationships, and then of course artist and revenue. There's 4 fundamental foundations, and all are important, but the most important is artist and repertoire, the actual music, the songs, the artists.
So how does A&R work? And we've heard a lot about A&R on panels and a lot of people giving jam, but our industry is in shit at the moment. We haven't had a superstar for a while. What is it that an A&R man looks for in a song? So you either got a song that you're hearing, like you heard the Ace of Base song, which was ready, and you picked it up and said, I think this will be a hit. And then there's someone who doesn't have a song, like me, and you look at me and say, I can make that guy a star. So how does the system work?
Well, music is subjective, right? So I don't always get it right, but there's also been times like, I've worked with so many artists that a lot of the industry didn't believe in, from Coldplay to Adele to Muse to Keane, Katy Perry, the list goes on. But obviously other people involved with these artists, I played my part, but there were other people involved before me, and sometimes yes, I was involved before, the actual labels and publishers. So music is subjective. I think today, A&R is driven by many analytics and research. A lot of the labels and publishers are risk adverse, and obviously being on streaming platforms or other, sort of data points, they can sort of, hedge their bets to see, okay, this this many streams, there's this much revenue being generated right now, this many monthly listeners, so they sort of mitigate the risk by looking at the analytics. But I equate that to looking at moments, right? So you see a lot of these streaming artists, they don't transcend into other platforms. Like, you may have an artist that has a billion streams, but they can't sell out 100 tickets at a live show, right? They're not on pop cultural platforms like sync, like film or TV or esports. They're not getting paid on radio, but they might have massive streaming numbers, but they don't translate on all these other touch points. And to me, to be a real successful artist, you've got to translate on every single key touch point. You know, live, merchandise, streaming, radio, brand integration, synchronization.
So if you had to put the attributes of the artist down, what would you do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What should the first thing be about an artist? I mean, should a singer be able to sing?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, it starts with A&R, so it starts with the song, you know.
So I don't have a song. So what do you do?
Well, you can find songs, right, from writers. But you've obviously got to look at the song, the artist.
Okay,
Can they
look at the song. So if you were signing me today,
Yeah.
right?
So if I looked at you, I'd go, okay, does this person have an amazing voice? Do they have an amazing presence? Do they have that je ne sais quoi about them? Where they
Are you guys listening? Great voice, personality.
Yeah, are they authentic? Are they unique?
The Red Nandi, you heard him today, right? How many of you were in the room?
Yeah. And do you have the ability to transcend across all these different touch points? Because, you know, for me, I would rather spend years working with an artist like Luke, who I just know is the genuine article, than working with an artist that has a billion streams, because it's like fast food.
Sure.
I don't mind chicken nuggets once in a while, but I can't eat it every day.
So you're spotting the artist, you know what to do with him. So you're getting in the right sounds based on what you see his ability to be. Why aren't you a record label?
Well, the thing was, when I first started the company as an A&R worldwide back in 2003, a lot of my clients were record label executives, so I was working, advising the heads of the multinationals. So at the time it was impressive because I think no one had ever done a deal where they were consulting 15 major labels at the same time. I was. So it was the first time that ever happened as far as I knew. And the reason for that was because when the labels approached me to hire me to do full-time A&R, I'm like, look, I still want to be in radio, I still want to be a manager, I still want to be a music journalist. And back then you kind of had to be one or the other. But I said, look, I can only find you artists, but I can also help break your artists, but I can also help build relationship currency. Because at the time, a lot of the American and British major label executives, they were very siloed into their own markets. And so I started educating the American executives and went, look, you need to know about what's happening in Germany, in Japan, in Africa, other parts of the world, because as our dear friend Seymour Stein would say, music, great hits can come from anywhere around the world, right? And that's the way that I view the world was, music is a global language. It's not limited by a geographical destination.
And at A&R Worldwide, you're still doing that. You're helping them discover artists and helping with the marketing and the promotions.
Correct. So we work with the artists, we work with their management, but we also work with labels and publishers, booking agents, brands. We also work with, film, TV, and esports and gaming companies, because music and A&R plays a part in all of those different touch points. So, for example, for many years we were global music consultants to EA Games, which is Electronic Arts, one of the biggest video game companies in the world. And I actually consulted their worldwide head of music, Steve Schnur, for about 15 years. And it wasn't just about finding music early, because we could future cast. Like being in radio, I could see things begin to translate, percolate. So we could sort of see the hits before they became hits. Because if I saw a reaction in South America, in Germany, key markets in the US, I'm like, okay, we're seeing a resonance globally with these songs very early on. As Marty and Avery, who run the most successful record label in the world, Republic Records, said when they first went to Republic, it's about creating a spark, and then smoke, and then some fire. So I would see sparks happening, and then a bit of smoke. I'm like, okay, this sort of validates my gut. The audience feels the same way that I do. And so I would then just, based on that sort of simple analysis, go, okay, we're going to support these artists. And then, the labels, obviously because going back to your original question, why was I a label? They want to sign the act, so if I was a record label, they'd feel that I was competing against them directly. But what I did was I did do joint ventures where I would partner with different labels. So I bought them the artist, I would help.
How much money do you have, sir?
Not enough, otherwise I wouldn't be working, right? I wouldn't be working 7 days a week. I've got to take care of Daniel, pay for his trip to India. So it's never been about the money, and here's the thing, I'll be honest, you can always make more money, right, in life. Anybody can make more money, but you can never get back time. And to me, time is the most important, health and time are the two most important commodities. And I never got into the business because of music, and people, especially my wife, always tells me, you're too nice at that. My former business partner, Steve Smith, who was the former CEO of Live Nation, he and I had partnered up to start A&R Worldwide. He was my boss previously. And I educated him on the world of music publishing, like Steve. I always want to keep A&R Worldwide neutral. Switzerland, we work with everyone. We don't own anything. We work with everyone as a completely neutral platform. But because of the track record, let's set up a separate entity, a sister company, if you will, where we can own rights. We invest in the artist, but we earn the ability to, control some of those rights. And that was a publishing company idea I, set up with him back in 2003. Unfortunately, I was naive and trusted his word, and I didn't end up realizing about a year and a half later that he had set up the company without me. So look, that company has now evolved into what is a $6 billion company, Concord Music Group. And I don't get mad. I'm like, you know what? Things happen in life, where they're meant to be. I never got it for the money. Maybe I am in it for the money now because I've 2 kids to marry off eventually and help them out in life. But yeah, it was never about the money. And even to this day, like someone like Luke, I have no commercial investment in him. I'm just a believer. And to me, there's over 120,000 songs a day now being released on Spotify globally, or somewhere around that number. A lot of it's crap. Some of it's good. A bit of it is great.
Yeah.
And a very small sliver is exceptional. And I always look for exceptional.
Yeah. So, good Punjabi boy.
Sometimes.
You haven't actually broken any Indian act in the US.
I have. I didn't sign the act, but I did help back in the day Apache Indian with giving him his first ever radio airplay with Arranged Marriage back in 1993.
Good counter. I can't say.
But I've also worked. We did speaking of Indian artists, we did Matthew Dixon's first ever English language EP. So I know she's a Bollywood actress, but I met with her a few years back. And she was wonderful to work with because she was so open to taking ideas and input. I said, look, you need a vocal coach. I know she sings great in Hindi, but I'm like, in English it's not as good, so let's get you a vocal coach. And she was totally open to that. Kind of talked about, obviously, the fact that she was, getting close to 50, like you're not going to be that teenage artist, so let's create music. That's kind of in the Dido vein, so it kind of appeals to your brand, your aesthetic. So people aren't going to be shocked and go, what the hell is Matthew doing? And she was phenomenal, and she, put together this EP, and I put together a team. I brought in Raja Kumari, and also an artist called Narinder Singh, who's a Finnish Punjabi hip-hop beat maker from Finland, living in LA, and we put together 6 great songs, and so her, there's been a few others, Pratik Kuad, I didn't, his former manager back in 2014, told me, hey Sat, bring him out to LA, can you give him a showcase spot at Music Expo? So I sat there, gave him some advice, and he did a great showcase performance, and obviously now he's signed to Waters here in India. But yeah, I've worked with a lot of different artists. Maybe not enough Indian artists, but that's from here. I want to work with more Indian artists.
So when you look at the Indian scene and what's happening, right? There's so many labels, and there's so many people today starting labels, so give them some advice as to what to do. Number one. And number two is, ever since I joined the business, we've had this dream about being able to break an Indian act the way we understand breaking acts. So we want to make we have a Shakira out there, moving her from Latin. We want to move people from India, Hindi, getting into the international markets. We need some tips. What would you say?
I mean, that's sort of an open-ended question, but again, what I said earlier, I think it's being authentic, being exceptional, and making sure you have a really cohesive vision for what your brand is. The music, the messaging, the branding, all those things need to be really cohesive. Because when you're an artist, you're like a startup, right? You've got to make sure that everything aligns the right way. You've literally got a 10-year plan in 1-year increments. And so you've got to plan accordingly. I mean, the IFPI, the International Federation of Phonographic Industry, did a report about 3 years ago where the average time span for an artist that's signed to a label before they actually have success is about 4.5 years. Which, again, doesn't surprise me because
It takes time to build.
it takes time to build. It's like being an Olympic athlete. You're not going to get gold medal after 2 months. It's going to take you 4 to 8 years, maybe longer. So you've got to be patient. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about the 10,000 hour theory. 10,000 hours to be good at something. Well, it takes 20,000 hours to be great, 30,000 hours to be exceptional. And if you want to cut across the noise, you've got to be exceptional, because today, good is not good enough. Whether you're a company, an executive, or an artist, or a songwriter, there's no fast track to success, but there is a fast track to failure. So you've got to be patient. Every artist I've worked with, it took time.
So, I think Aishwarya was on the panel on Lost Genres, and they were saying exactly the same thing. So there are certain disciplines in Indian music, like Indian classical and others. You can't sing them when you start out. It takes time to become proficient at singing them. So, yeah, we get it. So you're looking at someone who's got a voice, who has a presence, and has an ability, and you can see.
Also, are they likable? Because I will not work with assholes, because again, time is a most precious commodity.
He's not signing me. Okay. Yeah, but I still have to get to the US. What do I do? Can I pick up the phone and say, Sarah, this great artist, and can you help doing it, or do I need to get the artist out there too? Because the old days we used to say, you want to break it in America, go live there for some time. So the internet has broken all these barriers now. So is there something that I can do sitting in India, which is going to take the artist into American shores, for example?
Well, look, I think, you've got to look at not just the US, but yes, the US is still the #1 music market in the world, but the world is changing. And, these days, music can travel without you actually physically traveling. So I think, again, you've got to know your market. And the US, to a lot of people, is very daunting, but like anything, you've got to work from the bottom up, not the top down. So I always say to artists, if you're coming from India, like Pratik Kuran, for example, when he first came out, he did some West Coast dates, some East Coast dates, and then he sort of grew his market base. And the way the US works is that you can still break artists on a local level. So, for example, like if you folks on the West Coast, San Diego, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Central California, working up to Reno, San Francisco, Sacramento, Portland, Seattle. If you can break some of those key markets, you can break into America.
So that means the artist would have to stay there, tour there, and small venues, clubs, colleges, that kind of thing?
Yeah, touring, but also, focusing on your digital media marketing in those particular markets. So if you are doing a tour, make sure you focus on building, marketing strategies around those markets. And again, it's small baby steps, right? You've got to crawl before you walk, before you run. And if you learn how to crawl, you want to learn how to walk, then eventually you'll learn how to run.
So this social media thing always confuses me. There's so many bloody platforms. What do you think are the most effective? Where do you see the most traction happening?
Well, look, I think every platform is unique to every artist. So pick the one that's most authentic to you. For rock music, TikTok is probably not the best platform because most rock artists are pretty authentic, right? Spotify for hip-hop, pop, EDM, that tends to work. For alternative rock, it's usually live, traditional radio, some traditional media, obviously social media, but also synchronization. Like when you look at, film, TV, video games, and other sort of, brand integration, sync platforms. Usually they license alternative indie music.
So where do I put my music?
So you've got to know what is the most authentic platform to you.
Depending on your music.
Depending on your music. Know your audience, know your platforms, know the market, do your research. Like anything, if you're going to buy a home, you're not just going to buy a home without looking at it first and making sure that you do, almost like a proctology exam, right, to make sure there's nothing that's untoward with the property. So same thing, you got to do your due diligence.
So back in the day, we used to sign artists for, let's say, 3 years and say we'll do an album a year. Today everything's changed, it's become about singles. And some people say we should release a single every 6 weeks, someone says every 2 months. What's a good run rate, and is it actually necessary to do that?
My personal philosophy is release music when it's the appropriate time. There's no, methodical timeline. Now, for some people that might work, but at the same time, I always feel like if you're going to put music out there, make sure that your best foot forward. So if it takes three months, 6 months, just make sure you take your time. Why would you spend, some artists may spend months working on releasing a single, right, from the actual A&R process to the songwriting process to the actual recording, mixing, all that stuff, putting together a marketing plan, registering your back-end data, and then you might spend, say, 2 months doing all that, maybe 3 months, and then you give that song 6 weeks shelf life. That makes no sense to me. I always say great music has no expiration date. And it's like going back to Adele. One of the best things her manager Jonathan told me, when I asked him, I said, like, "What's your secret to her success?" He goes, "That scarcity is her greatest value," meaning that because she's not everywhere, her value increases because less is more.
And you're talking today's age. It was fine when Michael Jackson did it back in the day. Everyone's waiting 5 years for the next album. But in today's day and age, for Adele to be holding out is almost contrary to what's happening with Dua Lipa.
Yeah, but again, I say quality over quantity. Now, some people, I think, the way that people's minds have been programmed, it's become like this fast food mentality, right? Give me a chicken nugget, give me another one, but you don't really have a long-term connection to that song or the artist, right? And in my mind, there are 3 different creative types of artists. There's an act that might have a billion streams on Spotify. A month later, you forget about them. You have no idea. You don't care. There's no emotional connection. There's an artist that sits somewhere between that, but also has a consistency. And then there are artists like Luke Noah, who are just incredibly genuine. The music just moves you, and it's timeless. And I love to work with artists, not acts.
Okay, so
if I want an act, I go to a circus.
So in these 3 days and almost every day, I get artists asking me, should I sing in English or in Hindi? And I've had conversations with labels, international labels, about what language should an Indian artist sing in if you want to crack the international market. And I'm still not hearing anyone say anything, one decisive answer. What's your take on that?
There is no one decisive answer, and I'll give you an example. What is the biggest selling German artist of all time? Anybody know? Yeah. No. They did over $1 billion with their first album. Anybody know? Enigma. And their first album was sung in, basically Gregorian chants, right? So it's spiritually laced music. Again, it touched people. The first German language album to go #1 in the US was Rammstein's first album, Zen Soot. You obviously have had a lot of success with Bad Bunny. They've been authentic to who they are. To me, you can sing music in any way that you want. Yes, at some point, if you want to connect to different touch points outside of just the traditional media points like radio and streaming, and you want to be in sync and brand integration, yes, you may have to, do something, maybe it could be bilingual language, or sometimes, it can work in just your native language. But again, there's not really a concise answer, because at the end of the day, it's all about how do you impact pop culture. And the key words are impact. because today there's a lot of noise, but unless you have impact, you're not going to go anywhere. And also, pop culture, music is not just one-dimensional, it's multi-dimensional, and pop culture is really the entire ecosystem that if you can navigate as many touch points within that, you're going to be successful.
So, sir, just thinking of so many indie labels over here wanting to do stuff. Can they reach out to you? Is it possible for you to work with people sitting in India? Is that an opportunity that can happen?
Absolutely. But again, to your point, time is, the rarest commodity. So it's like anything. I tell my kids the same thing. If you're going to reach out to someone, make sure it counts. Don't waste people's time, and I'd rather have someone wait and send me the music when it's fully baked, or at least half baked, and it's exceptional, than just sending me 15 songs that, are like wallpaper, where it's wasting my time and, and like anything, I think whether it's myself, spending time with an artist or someone like you, I never want to waste anybody's time. And what really gets me excited is when somebody sends me just one song, and I go, this is a friggin' hit. Like, I want more. Like I said earlier, less is more. Like when I first heard Luke Noah, it's actually my son Daniel, who's doing some A&R scanning for me. He turned me on to his music. And first when I heard it, like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, his voice is incredible. Like, I want to play the song on the radio. And he was doing some scanning for Atlantic Records, and sent it to Aton Benori, who's an amazing A&R guy that's been working with Diljit Dosanjh in LA on his new record. And he was like, I love this guy's voice. It's authentic. It's different. He doesn't sound Swiss. He's sweet. It's from Switzerland. And I have no connection to him on a commercial level. Like, he's currently unsigned, not published, no manager, no booking agent. I just love his music. But that's what it takes. Make sure when you reach out to somebody, whether it's myself or anybody else, make it count.
So apart from an artist asking what language they should sing in, what other advice would you give young artists?
Look, behind every great artist is a great team, right? So make sure you have a great team behind you, because that's the difference between possible success and great success. I look at someone like, from the local market here, like Badshah, right? Or Arijit Singh, Tarsem and Abby, the whole team behind those artists, they know what they're doing. They have a great record label, they have a great management team, great publishing team, great social media marketing team. And you've got to grow into that, you're not going to have a manager if there's nothing to manage. So it's a process that sort of builds over the course of time. But like I said earlier, be authentic, be unique, be different. Don't be the same. You don't want to be the next Adele, you want to be the next you.
It's so true, because I've had conversations with people saying they want to make songs like Meri Jaan by King. He's already done it. Why would you want to do it again? Right? Anyways, I think you need to go.
I've got about another, time flies when you're having fun. I've got another 5 minutes or so we go.
Okay, so I want to open up the house to questions, because it's not every day that people get to talk to an A&R person, and especially someone with your pedigree. So I'm hoping there'll be a lot of questions, and we have to cut them short. Anyone want to go for it?
There's no bad questions.
Yeah, there's no bad questions. Come on, Red. Meri jaan kyun khate sara time? Ask that. Yep, go for it.
Put a radio voice, I can respond.
So, he's revealed it that I've been eating his head on these things. So my question, a lot of it has been answered with the questions asked by Atul sir. The question is that if I am an Indian artist, okay, to me an artist is an artist, it does not belong to a region, okay? And have you seen examples where somebody, not necessarily that good technically and with their voice, has created something unique which has gone on to transcend beyond regions, beyond cultures, and has stayed also? Because as you mentioned, you work with people who are the real artists who are working on the art and creating something which takes time. You keep correcting it, you keep checking different ways of making it unique and better. is what lives for a longer time. But has there been an example where somebody, because of their sheer uniqueness, has come up with something which is artistic and an act and has stayed with people for a longer time than usual?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, there are artists that maybe aren't the great singers, right? I mean, Anthony Kiedis from Red Hot Chili Peppers. I love the Chili Peppers, but you see them live, he's not the best singer. You know, Green Day, same thing. I actually walked out of a Green Day concert because it wasn't great live, but on record it sounded amazing. So there's always going to be, you know, those artists that translate or connect with you in different ways. And for me personally, like, yeah, if they have, like again, if they have that uniqueness, that je ne sais quoi, as I said earlier, I'm willing to work with them and also help elevate them to the next level. But they've got to have that uniqueness, that star quality. And star quality can be a very convoluted, you know, sort of answer. It can be a number of different things, but personality, drive, uniqueness, just authenticity, those are kind of the things that I look for in an artist. And if they aren't there fully baked, you know, my team and I will work with them to get them there.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a transactional question. So let's say an artist is starting out, right? And if a record label approaches him, or someone approaches him to buy his songs maybe. So how strong should he, or a person who is just a rapper who is just starting out, how strong should he negotiate so he gets the opportunity but also does not get exploited at the same time?
Look, and probably the labels in the room are going to hate me. Obviously, they're all my friends and Atul's friends, but here's the advice I give artists these days. Don't be the renter, be the landlord. If you have an exceptional song that's translating on different platforms, gaining success and momentum, do a licensing deal, which means that you give them the rights for a certain time period, they'll do the promotion and marketing, you have a vested stake, but after a certain term, the rights revert back to you. You'll always be the owner and the landlord, not the renter. So, you know, don't just assign your rights and give them away in perpetuity. I think that, you know, a lot of artists in the US have wisened up to that now. That, like, you don't really see a lot of artists just doing straight, you know, life of copyright type of deals anymore.
Amazing. That's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, one more thing. And it's, let's say an artist is, like, this is a question that comes up when an artist is new and there's no leverage that he has, maybe he has no numbers. And so what do you think, is numbers that he streamed or whatever plays he's got, is that a leverage, or is the song itself, the quality it has, the exceptional value it has, would that be a leverage when you deal with it?
Well, both. So most of the labels now, you know, in the Western Hemisphere, they have the traditional A&R, but also A&R departments that focus on A&R, analytics research. So if you have, you know, leverage through a high number of streams, yeah, they'll work with you, you know, and offer you a nice advance. But if your second song doesn't react the same way, it's, you know, the honeymoon's over. So I think it's different for each artist. Like I said, you know, some people are acts, so there's an artist, some are artistes. And what I find with artistes is that it takes them longer. Like Luke has, I think, 94 views on his video. But I remember, I'll even say that Muse, their first ever show in LA, Safta, who was actually Indian, he was their first manager. I'd worked with him on, you know, trying to get the band signed to the US and other markets. Their first show in Los Angeles, there were 0 people that showed up besides a lawyer, Safta, myself, one of my colleagues. That was Muse's first show. Now they sell out stadiums. Even like Frank Turner, who's like one of the biggest UK singer-songwriters, we did his first deal. His first show in LA, 5 people. Myself, 2 of my staff, his manager, and the bartender. So to me, again, going back to what I said originally, it starts off with amazing art, extraordinary art, and then if you have that, everything else will fall into place over time, because eventually they'll find you.
Okay, we have a couple of questions at the back.
If we have something that we'd like to share with you, how can we get it across to you?
So I'll be very transparent. So there's my Instagram account, so Sat Bisla on Instagram. And, I'll be completely honest and give him credit to my son Daniel, actually created my Instagram account. He manages it, he posts all the pictures, but he's very good at making sure all the information gets to me. You can also email me at sat@anrworldwide.com. And I'm always receptive, because one thing I've learned in being in the music business for the past 39 years is that, if you don't respond, you may miss out on an opportunity. Because there have been times when people have sent me emails, and like say, Sat, you're the only person that responded, and that song ended up being a hit. And the artist ended up, being massive. Like the band Keen, for example, their manager sent me their demos, and I heard one song, like, this song is a hit. I heard the second song, like, this is a fucking hit. Third song, it's a hit. And I literally called him at 2 in the morning UK time and said, hey, I got your demo, I want to work with you guys. Like, what's going on?
Great. Thanks. Good to know.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Himangi, and I'm a multi-genre singer, Indian classical, ghazal, and pop. So I myself am confused that would somebody like your label be interested in working with an artist like me? And I've got some ideas of doing fusions to make Indian music reach the world platform.
Again, if it's exceptional, I'd be willing to work with anybody, right? And even if it's like really good or has the potential, of course, my team and I are happy to work with any artist. And looking, the one thing I'll say, being from the UK, from a Punjabi family, I think, for India right now, it's an incredible time. And Atul and I talked about this. I mean, you've been in the trenches here for years, right, trying to build the future for everyone here in the room. And I think one thing that should not be overlooked is, a lot of companies are coming in from outside of India trying to grab market share, right? They may not really care about the long-term cultural impact of what you guys are doing. So you need to make sure that for this time, for India, you embrace this opportunity and don't just hand it over. Take pride in what you're doing. And there are a lot of people, that are NRIs like myself, that want to help. My friend Salvan Kotecha, who's probably he is the most successful Indian songwriter in the world. He's Max Martin's writing partner, so he's written hits for Taylor Swift, Ariana Grande, The Weeknd, the list goes on. He's Gujarati. I mean, we want to see India thrive, and this not just be a moment, but this be a movement that will last for generations. So we want to help, but we also know we can't help everybody. So we want to help those who are exceptional. And people like Atul are great filters, because I trust Atul, I trust people like Mandar, I trust their peers and friends, because they've been building this bridge for the young generation here to cross over into the world. So it's about also trusting people like Atul and his peers that have been in the trenches digging, working hard for the past 30, 40, 50 years, maybe in your case 60 years, and and trust some of these voices here locally, because I trust them. And I want to see this moment for India be a moment that lasts, for generations, because it means a lot to me, because I saw the sacrifices my parents made and my grandparents made, being first-time Indians living in England and going through racism and all sorts of other things that a lot of people went through, moving to different countries. And now it's great to see India rising, but I want to make sure that India thrives. And obviously, I want to see the music business, the creative business, reach its pinnacle on a global level, and I do feel that it will, because I feel this time it's different. And that's because of the hard work that people like Atul have done, and the organizer of this event, and many others, and we want to help support.
So, the other day I was just adding to that side. So I was in a session with him, he was talking to a young artist. And, there seems to be this tendency, and, artists do have this. You want someone to guide you, right? So it's always a case of wanting to guide. First, guide yourself, because you're standing at a crossroads. And if you don't know where you want to go, it's very difficult for someone to tell you where to go. Because you follow your heart. And I always say music is created from the heart and it touches the heart. So don't think with your head, because when you start thinking with your head to create music, you're missing a trick. You won't create sounds with longevity, as Zach was saying. So don't just reach out to people and say, hey, I'm a singer, I can sing anything. He doesn't know what to do with it. Give him a direction in which he can guide you, walk you down that road. He doesn't know which road to take it on.
I mean, sometimes we can. I mean, I think it's just basically boils down to, again, having a vision. Like, I can't teach you how to play a violin, but I can help you become a better violinist. Same thing about being an artist or an artiste. If you have a creative vision, we can help enhance it, with the years of experience that the team and I have and other people around you will have. So that's something just to keep in mind.
Anybody else? Zach, I think you're...
Or I think there's one in the back there.
Hello. Hi, Mr. Bisla. My name is Rajit. I'm a founder of a tech startup called Party Hunt. It's a mobile app to find and promote music events. Currently, we are the market leader in India. We have over 300,000 users, and we have.
We charge you for advertising now.
Sorry, I will come back. I will come to the question directly. So, is there a way a company, a tech startup like us, who is working in the music event ecosystem, can collaborate and work with a company like yours?
Absolutely. I know if you want to read the history, I didn't want to spend 5 hours there talking about myself, but if you go to anrworldwide.com, there's an interview I did with the founder of Music Business Worldwide that sort of gives a history of the past 37 years or so. So I work with Live Nation, so I understand, the live business, and obviously a lot of great artists are discovered in pubs and clubs. So the answer to the question is yes. Obviously, for me personally, I love to see an artist live because it gives me an understanding of who they are as a person, getting a feel of the energy in the room. I mean, sometimes you can see that on a video, whether it's on TikTok or YouTube, whatever, but I still love the actual live experience because that's where the rubber hits the road. So yeah, if we can figure out a way to collaborate, I'm always open to do it there.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I think one last question. I pushed my dinner back, so we're good. One or two more last questions? Oh, there was one young lady in the back.
Hi, I just wanted to understand when you are trying to analyze an artist. So, do you just listen to their demos only, or you, like when you said you pick artists up even while they are performing live? So, do you do an analysis where you also go and see them live and plus also go through their content? Like, how do you do the quality analysis for any artist in certain scenarios to build a catalog?
Well, we definitely do our due diligence. So I look at, obviously streaming data, I'll look at, Shazam data, I'll look at other things too, but it all starts off with the art. Do I feel it here? Do they look like a star? Do they have that authenticity? All the things I've mentioned before. And then everything else is sort of secondary to me. That's just me personally. I'm not saying my answer is a right or wrong answer. There are many A&R people that have signed artists based on data and are very good at it. But every artist I've ever worked with, it's always been based on their musicality, originality, authenticity, and most of them have gone on to be, global household names. But I've been wrong at times, I've been right at times. So, no one's 100%, no one has a 100% batting average. That's perfect.
In fact, interestingly, Simo used to say a 20% hit rate is good.
Absolutely.
20% for an A&R guy. And this is coming from one of the legends who discovered Madonna, Depeche Mode, and blah, blah, blah. But, there is a lot of failure also. So, everything's not going to succeed.
And the one advice I'd give, to all of you guys that my parents would give me and I give to my own kids is don't be afraid to fail, because fail also helps build success because you learn from your mistakes. I still make mistakes on a daily basis. Don't be afraid to, also take a chance. If you don't take a chance, you'll never know what's behind that wall. And I grew up in a very humble family, and I didn't come from a family of anybody in the music business, and it took me 16 years to get my first break. I started at age 15 working as an intern at a radio station, I didn't get my first break until I was, in my, well, I'd say probably like late 20s, but, I'll end off with one funny story. So my first A&R job was for Interscope Records back in 1995. So they had approached me and said, hey, we want to have a meeting with you. And at the time, the label was run by Jimmy Iovine, Tom Wally, Ted Field, the three original founders of Interscope. And back then we had cassettes, so I made a demo cassette and took it into the A&R meeting. And the head of A&R at the time, Stephen Levy, he's like, we're going to go through these songs, we'll get back to you. And there were three artists that I felt were absolutely phenomenal as far as having major hits. The one that was probably the least like it was the most creative. It was just very eclectic music, really cool production. And I'm like, they're probably not going to sign that, but at least they'll know that I have, varied taste. So a few days later, Stephen calls me and goes, Jimmy, Tom and Ted want to sign this band Acacia. That was one that was really cool and eclectic and very sort of avant-garde. I'm like, wow, that was the last one I expected them to sign. So anyway, the band was signed to Warner's UK. There was either Rob Dickens, who actually is Adele's manager's uncle, and he didn't have the best relationship with one of the people at Interscope, so he didn't do the deal. And then the other three they passed on. Well, about 2 years later, the other three went on to become all multi-platinum successes worldwide. And that's when I realized, you know what? That's a 75% batting average. Like, no one really knows what the hell they're doing. It's all very subjective. Yeah, I mean, the thing I was going to say was like, look, everyone here started off like where I did. I had no, answer to the things I know today, and I was just like a person that just wanted to be in the music business and just hopefully make it one day. I wasn't talented enough to be an artist, so I decided my pathway was to either work in radio, do A&R, other things, and I'm very blessed that I'm able to be here and share some of these stories with you guys, and I appreciate you guys taking the time and listening. But just realize that everyone has the ability to succeed, but you've got to work for it. Don't let failure hinder you. Strive to be your very best. Be authentic. Be nice to each other, and just be kind, and eventually you'll get there.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time. Thanks, guys.